Hello. It's December 16th, 2015, and I'm just learning how to edit film these days, and I probably will go to all of my films after this is done and start in the spaces I will edit. But I'm a new learner as far as this goes. And I just got a new telephone, an iPhone, and I'm going to see what I have to say here. It very much is the art of spontaneity and the art of thinking out loud. And it's a very interesting time. We're going through a presidential election, and I have a lot to say about such things. I know on some level I'm called to serve. I'm just not sure what and how I would fit into the picture. And again, this will be edited. There is something that I want to talk about. So many things that's why I stop and think, and I think out loud. So I think about an election 15 years ago, and I'm not one to hang on to things unless I'm supposed to. And it turns out that I think that I am, because there was an election that was stolen. And everything that is happening in America right now has to do with that. When an election gets stolen, and other energies get taken over, such as the energies of war, the energies of 9/11, all the things that happened, it created a curse in this country. And you can see it by the weather patterns. You can see it how the earth is responding. And the earth is a living organism, and we try to treat it like it's an inanimate object of our control. And that's pretty humbling sometimes, isn't it? But since that happened, I believe that there's been a curse that's gotten only deeper and bigger in America. And that's why when Donald Trump says, oh, America hasn't won anything in a long time, and we keep losing, and we're getting taken here and taken there, I believe it's all a part of this spiral that has led us downward. And the reason is because I think that Al Gore was supposed to be president. He even had a father who was in the Senate, I believe, and there's history there. But I always thought that he was destined and felt that destiny. And I remember all of his plans that centered around having an economy. And that first brought up the idea about economies and how they could revolve around climate change. And it could be a hidden gift or a blessing to go in that direction and to take an economy in that direction. And I believe that all the violence on the planet and all the fires and all the blood that is being shed on the earth is responding to that. And cycles are going a lot faster, and everybody's trying to grab at everything, and corporations are at their worst as far as corruption goes and what they're doing to the populace. And that causes political parties and politicians, since they're obedient to corporations, it causes them to be a little crazy too. And there's been a lot of massacres and so many things happening. And at root is this tangled conglomeration of things that have happened that are really complex. So I think a lot about that, and I like the way Al Gore has become a reluctant politician. And to me it says, well, I've had a taste of something so bitter and awful, getting an election stolen and just being around those people. And that's why he calls himself reformed. He's finally been able to let go of it. And here I am surrounded by politics in a lot of ways. I have a president who captured my life in a certain way and is restricting my freedoms in every area of movement. And he's using tactics that are, I could only describe them as an Islamic radical. And those are the tactics that he's using. Things like making reference to taking my house. And it was always like real revolved around property. And in the past couple of years, he takes a lot of pictures of himself in front of books. It's my dog running in the house. Always when I have the camera on. It's going nuts right now. He takes a lot of pictures in front of books and little subtle jabs, and then I get things from Ben Carson. And this is an entire secret community who's always reminding us of our racism. And when I first realized that these things were happening, I did a film about it. And right when the Obama White House started, I was told, we're in power now, and you're going to be our slave. And it was like really overt. And I found something so grotesque about that, something so horrible. Because a lot of people have done their homework around certain issues. And I always like to think that I do my homework about areas in the humanities, such as civil rights, human rights. And I myself have been victimized in those areas. So it's always been really important for me to be clear. And I guess I've had a special view in that. I talked about how I worked in psychiatry for many years, in all kinds of settings. I did child psychiatry, I did adolescent psychiatry, and then I did adult, and then I did geriatric, which was a real trip. But anyway, there's just a lot of power plays going on. And to me, it's the opposite of what you should do when you finally work through power problems. So it shows that we have a lot more to do in that area. And about the stolen election of Al Gore, I think he should run again. I would be the first one to say I'd like to be vice president and have Al Gore as my president, and be able to take a lot of the creative ideas I've had about infrastructure, about world economies. I would like to be part of that creation. Last time I said, oh, I would like to lead, and what I was meaning with that is that I do have a destiny in being a leader in the United States, or a world leader of some sort, because I've worked through a lot of the things that I think you're supposed to. Let's see. I am being inhibited and restrained by the Obama administration, and of course that includes Hillary, and that includes the Bushes, and the three of them, the Bushes, the Clintons, and the Obamas, are in this revolving door of the presidency, and they want to own it in a family dynasty. And really, that's not what America is about. I think it's time for the Clintons to stop playing with people, and they're expert politicians, and they're expert gamers, and a lot of the things that are going on started with Bill Clinton and are his fault, really. He can apologize all he likes, but if he made the right decisions to begin with, we wouldn't be having all the repercussions that we're having. So we need some wise leaders, and Al Gore has been through so much that I think he's learned the intricacies of leadership because of the path he took after he got the presidency stolen from him. So I think he's still a viable candidate, and I hope he does decide to run. And if he did, I'd be very interested in having an office of some sort with him. Last night they had the Republican debate, and I did watch it, and it was so apparent to me that not a single person there has the view of peace on our planet, and they made fun of the global warming, and the San Bernardino thing is playing everywhere. I mean, there are many more massacres caused by our own people who are like Charleston and Sandy Hook and all of those things. So I think they're all one. What I would say to myself, or what I've been saying, is how do you have a government employee going back and forth to Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and marrying a mail-order Al-Qaeda or jihadi bride? How do you, if he doesn't come under the radar, I'm asking who would? That's interesting to me. And I think it's from within that's taking us down. I don't think it's from outside. Donald Trump is painting a big brush when he says, oh, we're not going to allow Muslims in the country. And, you know, all of these negative things, and how we're going to have war for the rest of our lives, and nobody's ever going to get it and get what the world is supposed to be like, or an ideal vision of the world, if we keep this up and keep up the wars and keep up all the violence and keep up all the payback times and so forth. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, what to next? I would like to try to find a peaceful way out of this quagmire, and those are the things I'm always thinking of. For example, I learned a lot in medicine, being a nurse, professional nurse since I was 17. I did that before I went to college. I got my license and started that part of my career early on. And my mother said if I wanted to become an artist, that I would have to have something to fall back on. So I went to nursing school first, and it's a great body of knowledge to have, the human body and how everything works. And I could say that about medicine too, the way it's organized and the way a team really works. And so I like the idea of teamwork. And something that I learned very early on was to have a wellness approach with patients, not always an illness approach. And it's really a different pair of eyeglasses. And I think the same thing of the United States. We have a war approach to everything. And it sure would be interesting if we had a positive approach. And let me explain what I'm thinking about. A citizen's approach. You know how we focus on all the derelicts and all the evil, and we give so much energy to it that we'll be in conflict with it forever. That's what it wants. Just like the Middle East, they want us there in war, and they will always provoke and want war because they only have oil. They don't have anything else that they do. It's a little bit of a distortion. I'm sure they have a culture, and like anything else, I've studied the art of the Middle East, and it's amazing. And but this whole Islamic radical thing has really gotten to us. And I believe that we should get out of the Middle East, and we shouldn't give them any more energy. And we're giving them our energy, and that's, they use our own weapons. But I think that if we focused on our citizens, and people who do have the same proclivity that they don't want violence, and that we don't want to be a violent society, that we should really take that up and have citizen ID cards. So there's a lot of people who, and I'm one of those people, I don't have anything to hide. And there's a lot of people like that would be glad to go through a series of interviews and then never have to wait in a line again at an airport, and to be a known citizen that you are definitely not a terrorist, and you don't believe in any of the tenets of the Islamic faith, which has a lot to do with dictatorship and how you should believe, how you should worship, all of the rules. And Ben Carson is right about the idea that it is incongruent with a democracy. Islamic radical terrorism is incongruent with democracy. And some of the tenets of the Muslim faith, some of the ideas that say this is, that have rules about women and about women being inferior, that they have to be obedient to males. That's an aspect. Anti-gay. Some of the tenets of the religion, if enforced by these radicals, I have real difficulty with. And democracy does too. So there must be a way where you can ferret out that the negative qualities Um, I always say that I would build a wall between church and state. That there's some real difficulties going on right now in the United States about that. For example, with Obama using Sharia law language with me uh, about my case with him, uh, having bats go in my house and sexually attack me, and then mentioning it in his speeches, and the Clintons participating in that. And Bill Clinton has been a stalker of mine for many years, so the fact that they cracked down on me because their election is coming up and I got my house taken and they interfered in my relationship and broke it up, really. I mean, when I look back on that, I see it. They wanted me on their sex schedule. And it seems like Anthony Weiner and a lot of people have been victimized between the Clinton and the Obamas and the Bushes. And they're one big group of people who is attached to the presidency through the CIA. And they're trained CIA puppets. So that means that they do whatever the CIA wants them to do. And I think Obama is as much enslaved in his presidency as anyone else. I think the Clintons are a product of the CIA, and so are the Bushes. And it goes way back in time to the Kennedy administration and forever. So this has been a buildup of an authoritarian state that comes right out of the Third Reich and was translated by the Bushes in many ways. Their grandfather supported the Nazi regimes, and there's a lot of history to back that up, so I don't have a need to talk about it. But I will say that we need to have a positive view of citizenship, and maybe this idea that when we have citizen IDs and people who believe in the same thing about democracy or similar things, you can have really different views and still have the same views about democracy. Ideas about freedom, about not putting your beliefs onto somebody else. And this comes through in every way, this pushiness about religion and pushing your religious beliefs onto other people. I think about the abortion debate in this country, and I think that's really difficult for women. I'd like to see a zero abortion rate, but I'd like to see legalization. Not only for the people who are victims of rape, but people who are victims, incest victims. Why should this woman go to full term with a baby that was had in that way? I think that's more cruel and inhumane than an abortion. And the idea that you would snoop into somebody else's religious beliefs if somebody else has an abortion, why not just take care of your belief system and your religion and your religious ideas and stop worrying about what someone else does? And I think that's the major point that I'm trying to make, that too often we're in other people's business where it's inappropriate. I think and I think women should be aware of the idea that it's about your body and it's about the freedom to own your own body, that I think abortion is a valid topic. And I'm not a person who would have an abortion, who has ever had an abortion, But I didn't judge my friends when they went and did it. It's their karma, it's their thing. Why should I interfere with someone else's belief process, uh, with their path? I never would interfere in someone else's path. I don't think anyone should. So I think that that's a major premise of religion that we don't ever talk about. It's like, why don't, worry about your own. And your neighbor will worry about their own. Their beliefs aren't going to affect yours. And if somebody has to have an abortion, I believe it should be available. And we're soon reaching the point where you'll be able to see if you've conceived on your iPhone. We are reaching that point in our technology. In fact, you could know if you had a scanner and you had the right equipment, you could know if you had conceived. So I hope that the technology gets better. And of course, there are different ways of terminating a pregnancy. Of course, there are many ways. I just know in my own experience in medicine, and that was so long ago, I can only imagine what's available now. They even have a morning after pill. So a lot of these things, but my belief in abortion comes from when I was, I guess, my period in history. I was 16 when abortion was legalized, and I remember what a big deal it was for women and women's rights and women's right to choose and to choose her own fate and her own destiny without a man sitting in Congress voting on her body, or justifying an assault. If a woman gets raped and pregnant, if abortion was illegal, what would happen to that woman? What would happen to her life having that child? How would she feel about that child? So this is interfering in a woman's right to choose and to own her own body. So this issue has always been important to me. And if we want to have a completely equal society and a democracy, this is a major point. So I urge women to look at and rethink this, because it's not, techniques of abortion are time-related and are technology-related and are medical systems related. And it's really not about that. It's about that freedom to choose your own body and to control your own body, and you should be able to do whatever you'd like. And this idea of sticking your nose into somebody else's religious beliefs has everything to do with terrorism and the Islamic Brotherhood and the way they go into other people's business. And it's happened to me a lot. So it's very difficult to articulate. People trying to have a hold on you, who look up your life and your family and go into your business. That has happened a lot with the Islamic Brotherhood, and it's been very destructive. And I have lost friends and family members because of it. And I have experienced anti-Semitism on that level. Levels of misogyny because I'm a woman, because I'm a free woman. Not so much anymore, though. They're seeing to it that I always feel impinged upon, and the Clintons have snooped so much into my business, and they had Governor Richardson snooping into my business for them when I was living in Santa Fe. And I can remember a lot of things that happened to me regarding the Clintons. But as soon as an election's coming up, you hear a little bit more from them. And suddenly, I have to move and all of these things because that's the way they're professional energy hoarders, and they use it for their political campaigns, and they use it for all their evil business. And I have thought to myself sometimes that they're Islamic terrorists. They have the same tactics and snooping and terrorizing me and pestering and killing my pets and secretly doing this and that, and they get off on it when I'm not well. They try to make me unwell. But now that I know who's doing it and where it's coming from, I haven't had a sick day like I used to. So that's good. But I also started out on my path very early, long before they ever existed. So I know the differences. And when the Clintons arrived, suddenly I began to experience my family being split apart, and all of a sudden my brother-in-law started doing these real shady things to me and selling me off to German people, and it completely split up my family. And Hillary went to high school with my older cousins who are 10 years older and a generation ahead of me. And it had a lot to do with how I was snooped on and how they sold me off. And I was part of their underneath their crime organization. And they're big bullies, and nobody really knows who they are and what they're like. But anyway, I've spoken about the idea of abortion, but there's so much more to it. And when you see violence happening because of that, you see how fiercely people are holding onto their belief systems and are concerned about someone else's belief system. And what's more fearful to a country is that big brother mentality of saying what you're doing is wrong and against my beliefs. Let everyone have their beliefs. That's what a free country is about. You shouldn't be dictating what people believe and what their religious beliefs are. And I think that that's going on across the board. So if we made it a real democracy, religion wouldn't be playing as big of a part as it does. And therefore, I think that that's a way to cut down on terrorism and creating dissension within this country. Something else, the whole idea of citizen ID cards is taking a positive approach, and they could have something about if you don't have an arrest record, if you have no major crimes, if you, there could be a criteria for citizenship, and how people would feel safer. The idea of being safe on an airplane is a major issue. But there are some people who would follow the rules even if they didn't have to. They just live a certain way. And so it seems like we go through a lot of trouble and spend a lot of our time on the negative. And maybe we could focus more on our citizens and what we have to do to gather ourselves together for a multiracial, multicultural society that we want to be, and that we have to work from within to expand our citizenship and to do outreach. Sometimes outreach to some of these, to people who are having hard mental problems might help. And we should look within ourselves to see some of the problems that we could deal with that would prevent terrorism. I think that's something major. It's a major idea that people are so much on the negative side, destructive side, war side, that we have to find ways of being citizens and belonging to one great nation and focus on being that one great nation. I think that's where the Trump appeal is why that's happening. We're not focusing on the things that make us great. We're not focusing on education, educating our young, what their dreams might be for the future, or that if we even have a future. And I'm not really communicating well today. It's not a good day. I think I have to go back to my writing and rewrite and maybe make a script for myself. And so many things come to me when I'm off camera. And now that I'm on camera, I can't think of anything. Oh, I have a good one. I want to talk about this development that I had when I was working in psychiatry. And I saw some of the imagery that the young focus on. And that's how we have fed them. And I want to take you back to 9/11. And remember that day. Remember one of the news stories that I was able to watch where they were talking about how they closed down certain violent movies in the theaters because people were having a really hard time with the violence on that day and near that time. And it makes me think about this idea that what if we were always like that, where it affected you to see images that were difficult. That would be saying something about how we would be educated. I remember when I was growing up, it was all during the time of the Vietnam War, and the news would be dedicated to that. And I remember sitting down and watching the news with my father on the couch, and he'd swing his arm over and put his hand over my face whenever there was a violent image. And I've never been... I'm done.